Okay, at this point it gets even a little bit weirder. What I'm going to need to do is explain a little bit of Plato's metaphysics to make more sense of this. We've seen that opposing one side of the soul doesn't work with opposing it to the other, right? Most of the time desire is going to win, and if desire doesn't win, then we are conflicted, which is a form of torture, and it's not very pleasant, right? So, right, what we have in terms of Plato, in terms of his metaphysics, is a theory of the underlying nature of truth. Right? Now, when I look at any particular thing, this is a piece of chalk. Right? This is, well, you can't see it, but it's a chair. Right? This is a chalkboard. Right? These are all things that we can see, and we understand that these are things that we can see. Right? What makes this a piece of chalk? Right? Is it its physical makeup? Is it its length? Is it its solidity? Is it its taste? Right? Anything that we can sense about the thing? Well, if you think back to Heraclitus and Parmenides, right, we have a problem there because anything sensible is in a constant state of change. Right? So as soon as I say this is a piece of chalk, it's no longer one piece of chalk, it's something other than it was. Right? So real understanding, according to Plato, involves not understanding the senses, but rather understanding the essences of various things. Right? What is it that makes chalk chalk? What is it that makes a chair a chair? What is it that makes a tree a tree? Right? Now, tree is a good example. If we understand what a tree is, right? Let's call that thing there a tree, right? Then we notice when we look at particular trees that they're wildly different from one another. You look at an evergreen tree versus a palm tree versus a maple tree, right? These things are wildly different than one another. They don't even look alike. How is it that we unite these things under this particular idea of tree? We do all the time, right? Even amongst humans, right? I am a 6'1", slightly balding Canadian male who's white, right? All of those things that you can say about me are, well, first off, sensible, right? They rely on our senses to determine these things. 6'1", white, male, slightly balding, what have you, right? These are sensible things, but none of the things that our senses tell us about people, about things, make them quite what they are, right? A green tree, a brown tree, what have you, right? What Plato wants to claim is that it's not the things that we can sense about a particular thing that make a thing what it is, but rather it's this realm of the essences or the forms that make a thing what it is. Right? We can think about this in terms of trees, in terms of pieces of chalk, in terms of coffee cups. These things come into existence, they change dramatically throughout their existence, and then they pass away. Right? So, what makes a thing for Plato is its form or its essence. Right? And since we're not relying on these sensibles, right, or how a thing appears to figure out what a thing is, right, or what's more, right, in terms of what makes a thing, nothing we sense actually makes a thing what it is, right? Rather, it's going to be through thought or reason, right, that we attain an understanding of what a thing is, right? And this is more clear, right, if we think of ideas like justice. What's justice? Right? It's an important idea to all of us. Right? Anybody like to draw it for me? We never directly intuit justice. Right? It's not sensible. All we ever sense are particular people doing particular things. Right? But justice is an important idea. It's real, it's concrete. We frame our lives around it, right? We form our governments based on it, etc., etc. right? But we never actually sense it. We only really get to the thing through thinking or reasoning about it, right? So what Plato wants to claim is that, well, we exist here as this combination of body and soul in a realm of appearances and sensibles, right? What we actually sense, right, what actually appears to us are imitations of these essences or forms which exist in a completely different realm that we have access to because we've got this handy-dandy rational soul, right? The soul, through its faculty of reason, gives us access to these forms, and these forms are actually what make things what they are. Right? The wild thing is that if we never in our lives actually see these forms, how do we make use of these forms on a daily basis? And we do. Every time I say cat, you picture a cat. You've understood what I mean by cat. Right? Essentially. Whether I'm talking about a tabby, whether I'm talking about a calico, whether I'm talking about a tiger or a lion or, something along those lines. Right? You know you've made use of the essence or the form of catness, which is what makes a particular cat rather than anything you can sense about it. Right? So, right, what Plato wants to claim, right, and this is why the immortal soul was so important, is that in order to have access to this realm of the forms, right, the soul must have intuited them or had some sort of experience with them before becoming united with the body. Right? Now, the body, right, has a couple of things that are associated with it. Right? First off, we have senses. And secondly, we have desire for pleasure. Alright? And by Plato's understanding, both of these things tend to lead us astray. Alright? So if we return to the pie chart here, this tripartite division of the soul, right? Ultimately, right, what this large form of immediate desire is directed towards, right, at least as we experience it, right, is immediate physical pleasure, and it only feeds the body and not the soul. Right? This is going to be the other problem with love. Right? So the soul, before it came into existence, existed up in this realm of the forms. Right? And what's more, what Plato wants to claim is it was nourished by these forms. Right? The soul is nourished by this heavenly form of perfect truth. How did we wind up in this imperfect world where the things that we intuit are just basically cheap copies of these forms? They're imitations. Okay? Well, the soul did not get enough nourishment from these forms when it was up there, and we fell. Right? We fell to this realm where we have only the murkiest intuition of this perfect essential truth. Right? We only murkily recall it. Right? So the way that we're able to identify a tree, a cat, a dog, make use of these forms, perfect triangles, that's a cheap, crappy imitation of a triangle. I say triangle, you know precisely what I mean. Right? And not by looking at particular triangles, but by thinking and reasoning through the mathematics of a triangle. Right? So, we don't want to be down here in this world of appearances. We want to somehow rejoin and relate to this perfect realm of the forms in which perfect truth exists. Right? It's what makes us what we are, it's what makes
things what they are.